The Mary Tyler Moore mystery is finally cracked, and the truth is far from the flawless image we were sold. She could light up the screen with a smile, toss her hat into the air with that famous burst of optimism, and embody the idea of the capable, cheerful, independent career woman. Yet behind that polished persona was a life marked by grief, addiction, emotional distance, and constant battles with the industry that pretended she lived a perfect life. For decades, Mary Tyler Moore was held up as the symbol of modern womanhood. Talented, gracious, and eternally upbeat. But the real woman was far more complex. The turning point in her life came on October 14th, 1980, when her only child, Richard Ritchie, Meeker Jr., from her first marriage to Richard Meeker Sr., died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound at just 24 years old, while she was at the height of her fame, officially ruled an accident. His death involved a small, snake charmer, sawn-off shotgun that went off in his USC residence. Yet, even Mary later admitted she quietly questioned how someone familiar with firearms could have such a catastrophic accident with a loaded weapon in his living quarters. The loss tore her apart. In her autobiography, After All, she openly blamed herself, confessing she was not the greatest mother. That by the time Ritchie was 5, she had already let him down because she was more focused on being a good actress than being present for him. Friends said she never fully recovered and spent years wondering if her ambition, absences, and emotional distance had contributed to his aimless struggles with identity, substance use, and direction. As audiences watched her play the upbeat, childless by choice Mary Richards, the real Mary was a grieving mother, carrying a guilt that never truly faded. At the same time, she was fighting a secret war with alcoholism that began during the Dick Van Dyke Show and worsened through the 1970 seconds. Publicly, her characters might sip an occasional glass of wine. But privately, she drank to numb anxiety, loneliness, and the pressure of living up to her own carefully curated image. Colleagues noticed the small signs: Monday mornings with tired eyes, occasional difficulty remembering lines. Yet she remained such a disciplined professional that the public had no idea anything was wrong. By the late 1970 seconds, as the Mary Tyler Moore Show ended, her marriage to television executive Grant Tinker was crumbling, her son was struggling, and her career choices became more uncertain. The drinking escalated into afternoon to night binges that affected her health and relationships. In 1984, she finally admitted she had hit bottom and checked herself into the Betty Ford Center, later writing that alcoholism was a disease, but also insisting, with her typical honesty, that no one forced the alcohol on her, and that she alone chose both to drink and to stop. Her confession in 1995 shocked fans who saw her as perfect, yet it also helped destigmatize addiction for countless women who saw themselves in her story. Just as jarring was the contrast between her warm, open characters and her reputation on set. While Laura Petrie and Mary Richards felt like the kind of women you'd want as your best friend, Moore in real life was often described as cool, reserved, and tightly controlled. On the Dick Van Dyke Show, her meticulous, precise style sometimes clashed with the looser, improvisational energy of Dick Van Dyke and Maury Amsterdam. By the 1970 seconds, as star and co-owner of MTM Enterprises with Tinker, she wielded significant power over scripts, casting, and even lighting. Writers recalled that she could be charming and polite, yet icy when crossed, rejecting storylines that didn't fit her understanding of Mary Richards or threatened the image she was building. Betty White later commented that Mary wasn't as warm as people thought. but she was smart enough to fake it, a remark that quietly exposed the emotional distance behind the beloved facade. Her relationship with co-star Valerie Harper, who played Rhoda Morgenstern, mirrored that tension. On screen, they were soulmates. Off-screen, they were respectful but not close. And as Rhoda's popularity grew and spun off into her own series, people on set sensed Moore's fear of being overshadowed. The real Mary also fought constant behind-the-scenes battles with CBS over how political her show was allowed to be. The Mary Tyler Moore Show dared to center a single woman in her 30 seconds who chose career over marriage in 1970, which was revolutionary enough. But Moore wanted to go further, pushing for stories about pay inequality, sexism, and a more honest depiction of Mary's sex life. Network executives balked, warning her not to make Mary too independent or too overtly feminist, insisting she remain a nice girl audiences could project their own comfort onto. The result was a constant negotiation. Mary could date, could have men stay, could push back at her boss. But everything had to be coded and subtle, so that more conservative viewers could pretend nothing radical was happening. Moore played the long game, smuggling feminist ideas into character-driven stories instead of overt speeches, and that quiet political work paved the way for more outspoken shows that followed. At home, however, the life of the woman who symbolized independence became tangled in a marriage that ultimately broke her. Her relationship with Grant Tinker, which began in 1962, looked perfect from the outside. She was the star, he was the savvy executive, and together they created MTM Enterprises. The kitten logo parodying MGM's lion, producing hit after hit. The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Bob Newhart Show, Rhoda, Lou Grant, yet friends later said they built an empire that buried them emotionally. Tinker's constant work and traditional expectations clashed with Mary's growing independence and depression. And, by the late 1970 seconds, rumors of emotional affairs, distance, and unmet needs swirled quietly through Hollywood. When the marriage ended in 1981, Tinker kept control of MTM. The company built on her talent and initials, while she spiraled through grief over Richie's death, the end of her marriage, and the fading of her signature show's glow. She described that period as the worst time of her life, and those close to her agreed. Eventually, she found stability again with her third husband, Dr. Robert Levine, and continued working, advocating for diabetes research and animal rights, but the scars remained. When you pull all of these threads together, the loss of her 2 4-year-old son under tragic circumstances, the secret alcoholism, the guarded relationships with co-stars, the constant tug-of-war with anxious network executives, and the collapse of the marriage that defined her career years, you don't get a fallen icon. You get a real woman who kept standing. The sunny, hat-tossing Mary Richards was never a lie. But she was an aspiration, a version of herself Mary Tyler Moore wanted to be. The reality was messier, more painful, and infinitely more human, and knowing that doesn't tarnish her legacy. It finally makes it complete.